I'd like to tell you all a story about a man named Alfredo Longo. When he started showing symptoms of mental illness, his sister called the police for help. When they arrived, they helped calm him down and escorted him to the nearest psychiatric facility, where he received crisis stabilization services. In a week, he was given a discharge date, and he left the facility with medication and a plan to recover. Except that's not what happened. When the police showed up, they asked him to remove his hands from his pockets. When he refused and backed into a corner, they shot him. He died later that day. The death of Alfredo Longo is unfortunately not an isolated incident. According to Washington Post data from police shootings in 2015, of the 991 people killed by police that year, 254 of them showed signs of mental illness. In this speech, I'd like to show some of the problems facing mentally ill people in our current society and show how some of these problems could be solved through good lawmaking. As a person growing up with obsessive-compulsive disorder, I understand the stigma faced by mentally ill people in this country. But fortunately, I've had access to some great parents and fantastic resources. Many mentally ill people are not that lucky. In the following speech, I will illuminate some of the brutal conditions faced by mentally ill people in the United States, introduce a bill that could help solve some of these problems, and visualize the benefits that such a bill would have. I'd like to start by showing some of the problems. Firstly, mentally ill citizens have difficulty finding resources and support and often face abuse. Due to the social stigma around having a mental illness, many mentally ill people are discouraged from seeking treatment. Not only that, but there is a lack of affordable community resources to help these people get the treatment they need. Mentally ill people are already more likely to be in poverty, and this will only discourage them from getting treatment more. According to the Kaiser Family Foundation, 2.7 million Americans are uninsured with a serious mental illness, and this number is only going to go up. Not only that, but the social stigma surrounding people with mental illness causes the police to be more likely to use force. When police are scared, they will use force, and unfortunately, they believe that mentally ill people are just unpredictable. CIT training can help with this, but 25% is the number of officers on any given force that should have CIT training. And according to Tim Potter of the Wichita Eagle, only 14% of Wichita police officers have CIT training. Psychiatric facilities, such as group homes and state hospitals, have increasingly become dangerous places. Due to the deinstitutionalization of the United States in the 1980s, many resources are not there when we need them the most. One example is group homes. According to Christine Montross, a hospital psychiatrist, in an opinion piece she wrote for the New York Times, group homes have undergone devastating budget cuts. Staffs are smaller, wages are lower, and workers are less skilled. Severe cognitive impairment can be accompanied by aggressive or self-injurious impulses. With fewer staff members to provide care, outbursts escalate. Group homes then have no choice but to send violent patients to the psychiatric hospital. This can only result in more dangers for not only patients, but the staff of these facilities. Montross continues, as a result, admission rates of severely mentally disabled patients at my hospital are rising. They join patients who are suicidal, homicidal, or paranoid. We have worked to minimize the use of restraint and seclusion on my unit, but have seen the frequency of both skyrocket. In 2017, restraint and seclusion should be last resorts, but often this is not the case in psychiatric facilities. As you can see, deinstitutionalization has not led to the self-sufficiency of the mentally ill. It has only led to a lack of sufficient resources that escalate fear and tension between mentally ill and neurotypical people. Prisons, the largest mental health provider in the United States, do not fare much better. We have the highest rate of incarceration of any country in the world. Not only that, but according to James Glaze in a Department of Justice report, more than half of prisoners have a mental illness. Due to privatization of prisons, this problem is only going to get worse. According to Anna Cyril E. Daniel for the Journal of American Academy of Psychiatry and the Law, the profit motive may trump quality and compromise ethics, standards, and practice. Profit-oriented service providers tend to keep certain key staff positions unfilled or partially filled, and encourage less expensive treatment approaches. This can only lead to the third leading cause of death in prisons: suicide. Suicide prevention programs in prisons are ineffective and ultimately only lead to more distress for the prisoners. According to Michael Needleman of CNN, traditionally, inmates are locked in a bare cell by themselves. Many are given paper gowns or tear-proof clothing to prevent them from creating a noose, and their belongings are confiscated. I'd like to let you imagine for a moment being in some of these situations as a mentally ill person in environments of fear and violence. Now, I'd like to propose a solution. Secondly, I propose a law to be implemented with the following requirements. Remember that 14% of police officers with CIT training? I'd like to take that number to 100% for every police officer. Next, I would like to refund community centers, psychiatric hospitals, and prisons. This is places like Grace Med ComCare here in Wichita, Osawatomie State Hospital in Kansas, and El Dorado Correctional Facility. These places could experience a resurge of fair treatment for mentally ill people. Now I'd like to show how this bill will help solve some of the problems I've addressed. Thirdly, this policy would contribute to the safety and health of everyone, not just the mentally ill. CIT training is proven to reduce danger. According to the National Alliance of Mental Illness, after the introduction of CIT in Memphis, officer injuries dropped 80%. That is a huge number. Not only that, but CIT reduces stigma and officers will be less likely to use force. And if mental health treatment is refunded across the country, the mentally ill will move from prisons, the streets, and abusive environments and into happier lives. If psychiatric facilities are refunded, then the money to care for people in poverty will be there and they will not be kicked out. Even insured mentally ill people are constantly at risk for being kicked out of facilities that insurance providers do not think that they truly need. If the money was there for them already, they would not be at risk. If group homes were refunded, then we'd have more room for patients that should be there, and they would not have to be in psychiatric facilities where they do not belong. And if prison mental health treatment was refunded, then prisoners would receive the treatment they need, and we could stop treating prisoners like second-class citizens. This will only contribute to the safety of patients and staff in all of these facilities. In conclusion, I've introduced some of the conditions faced by mentally ill people in this country, introduced a bill that would solve these problems, and visualize the benefits that such a bill would have. Please call Jerry Moran and Pat Roberts, our senators, or our 4th District Representative Ron Estes, and ask them what they are doing to help mentally ill people in Wichita, in Kansas, and in this country. Not only that, but reach out to your friends. Ask them how they're feeling. If they tell you that they might be experiencing symptoms of a mental illness, encourage them to seek treatment and don't shame them. Tell them it's okay to be mentally ill and that you will always be there for them. Because no matter who you are, I will be there for you. Remember Alfredo Longo? His death could have been prevented in a multitude of ways. But unfortunately, the United States that we live in is not accommodating to people with mental illness. We need to make that change. Thank you.